The jury is well and truly out on whether Tottenham had a good transfer window or if we'll be left to rue not buying more Premier League ready killers who can take advantage of the final third opportunities that we regularly create. In today's episode of Tottenham Talk, Jorri and I will discuss the pros and cons of Spurs' transfer window, long-term recruitment strategy, and what's missing from the Tottenham squad as we approach an incredibly hectic period of games in the Premier League, Carabao Cup, and Europa League. Guys, thank you so much at home for watching and listening. Please do press that like button. Please do subscribe if you're not already and become a member. Only £1 a month. All the details of how in the description box below. But now I'm going to introduce Jorri. Jorri, how are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks, Barnaby. How about yourself?
Yeah, very well. It's lovely to have you on. For any of you guys who've never seen Jorri before, Jorri is someone who I regularly talk to on We Are Tottenham TV in their post-match fan call-in show. And I wanted to get Jorri on as a regular on this channel to talk because not only is he known as the Joracle for his knowledge of all things tactics and Tottenham Hotspur, but also he just gives a really kind of just like an honest, non-reactive, non-angry opinion on all things Spurs, and that's kind of where I feel I am about Spurs, kind of mostly glass half full, but also able to be honest when necessary. So Jorri, you're happy to come and talk on transfer stuff today, and let's just get straight into it. I think I'm going to just give some kind of stats and thoughts on what we've done in this transfer window. So our income in this transfer window was 55 million euros total. Expenditure, so what we spent, 149 million euros. And then the transfers that we got in this summer, Dominic Solanke, Archie Gray, Wilson Odobert at the end there, Lucas Bergvall, Yang Min-hyuk will come in January, and of course, Timo Werner on loan. And then in terms of the players that we got out of the club, which I think we need to talk about almost as much as the incomings, Oliver Skipp, Emerson Royal, Joe Rodon, Gio Lo Celso, Eric Dyer, Ryan Sessegnon, Tanguy Ndombele, Ivan Perisic, Japhet Tanganga, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, Brian Hill, and then the loans of Solomon, Valise, Scarlett, Devine, and Phillips, amongst others. So I wanted to start really, Jorri, by asking what you thought. I kind of wonder whether are the kind of angry Spurs fans who feel like we haven't done enough, are they kind of missing the point? Has this window been more about kind of getting players out, or at least as much as getting players in, and therefore setting up a platform for us to continue the kind of good, young, talented signings that we've made in the past 18 months?
Yeah, I think maybe a good portion of the fan base is missing the importance of getting the players out for sure. Although we always kind of, I think most complain about it when it turns into 15 loans or whatever, you know. But also just for the cohesiveness in the group and so on, you know, it can be difficult to mix a senior squad with a younger, newly arrived squad, you know. Just in any workplace, you know, people feel like they know what their club is about when they've been there for a while and so on. And our club, I mean, this project is going to be about something completely different than probably since Potts left. So. So yeah, I think that's a very important, probably the best part of our business this summer, I think, is the outgoings for sure.
Yeah.
It's also a relief to see that there's a little bit more cutthroat approach from the board, from Levy, to let players go. Of course, I think all of us still think Levy is too conservative and too kind of maybe managing too much still, you know. But for me, at least, how I feel about the project is a different thing. But I do feel that Ans and his coaching staff and the board are consistent in following this project. I was asked the other day, I think maybe it was you, Barnaby, on We Are Tottenham TV, that if we could have signed anybody to kind of ensure more success this season. And for me, I definitely think that this window was mature for a really top class striker in terms of like a title challenging level.
Sure.
I do think Solanke is a great addition, but once we get to a point where we're talking about challenging for the title, or maybe even in the Champions League next season or something, then I think Solanke is closer to a brilliant backup striker than the main striker, you know. So yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
Ange, you mentioned there a little bit about the kind of offloading of almost like the players, or it felt like you were saying almost the players who were kind of Poch's generals. And the reality that if we're starting this new project of a kind of young, talented, hungry, forward-thinking, progressive playing squad, it almost needed to get rid of all of those so that there's no kind of egos left in the changing room. I just wanted to ask whether is this the correct strategy for Tottenham Hotspur? Because in reality, from my point of view, I don't really see how Spurs can compete in the transfer market when, even if we had all the money, the reality of it is that we're really only swimming in the waters of players that Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man United have decided not to go for first. And I see it almost like maybe Scott Munn and Johan Lange have come in and decided that maybe Tottenham need to be like an English version of Dortmund. Do you think that's right? And if so, is it the right way for us to go at the moment?
I think I definitely think it's a good way for Tottenham to as a recruiting strategy. Whether I think a Dortmund type setup can win the Premier League, I really don't think so, to be honest. And I think we're going to see it with Arsenal, the boys down the road, is that they're going to get in second and third place a lot of seasons probably, but they won't get over the line. That's what I'm convinced, and that's even you know, in spite of them in spite of Arteta becoming quite the practical manager instead of a kind of a ideological manager, and also them being quite aggressive in the transfer and going pretty big in transfer regards. So
Yeah.
so I like, but this is the problem in general with the Premier League. We're not the only club that have this problem. The problem is called Man City, basically. You know, how do you get one over on Man City? And that's, you know, Liverpool did it, so maybe that's a bit of a template, you know. But they only just got it over the line, and they've kind of not collapsed, but they've retreated from that since then. So yeah.
I think do you see any commonalities between Big Ange Postecoglou's kind of early, 1 year at Spurs and Jurgen Klopp's first kind of year when he was at Liverpool? Because I think it is interesting that you brought up Liverpool being the only team who were able to get to, what was it, the probably like the 97-point mark that you need to get over Man City to win the Premier League. Is there any familiarity, any kind of patterns between those, or is Postecoglou? Because when I've spoken to you before, you've been a little bit, I think it's fair to say, a little bit unsure whether Postecoglou's kind of ideological thinking can succeed in the Premier League. But is it more a matter, is there a possibility that once he gets the players in who can really push that style forward, that we could go on a similar run to Klopp's Liverpool?
Well, I mean, I'm skeptical myself, and it's not only Ants, it's just, you know, ideological football in general. I'm kind of skeptical on that, and I feel also like the more old school, and for me, like one of the prime examples is Ancelotti. You know, like really tweaking everything and setting up for opponents and so on. I think that's getting overlooked and downgraded to too much these days. But I do like what I would say though was like towards basically from after the Chelsea game last season, I started getting more and more concerned about Ants because I really didn't feel the players were getting the tactical setup that they needed to have the best chance, and not the coaching or instructions that they need. They didn't seem to find the way, and we left us vulnerable in a tactical manner. What I've been really encouraged about, even though we would have wanted to see more points at the start of this season, is that I've both seen and I guess plugging the holes in terms of the set pieces in both directions. And also, I've seen this, which gives me a lot of encouragement, is that we are playing more with two sitting central in the midfield, which for me, that's really what we need to do more often than not. I can live with us going all out in periods or against certain opponents, but we need to have that option. Otherwise, we're asking for trouble. What I'm really happy about right now is that everything is very consistent with this project. Now the big question is just, is the project, like, is it a viable setup for major accolades? Which time will tell, I guess.
Do you get the sense quite a few journalists are suggesting that it feels like Tottenham are building this project towards the time when Pep Guardiola leaves Manchester City, or maybe Manchester City fall foul of those 115 charges? Do you think that's what's happening? And if so, do you think that's the right strategy?
I mean, I'm sure that's something that they're kind of conscious of, but it doesn't really seem like an Ans thing that much. And to be honest, if that was the case, Ans hasn't helped himself by the various statements about second season and dreaming and so on, you know. So that has annoyed me a little bit, because I don't feel I feel it's unnecessary kind of catering to the fan base. But on the other hand, I also feel it does apply necessary pressure to the culture and the board, you know. So, you know,
And isn't Jorri, isn't that exactly what we needed though? Because, you know, there's a lot of talk whenever anything goes badly for Spurs, it's about, you know, it's the typical Spurs, isn't it? It's the mentality. You see it from the pundits. They're like, you know, Spurs don't have a backbone, etc., etc. And actually, one thing I feel like I should say is people always forget, under Pochettino, we absolutely did have a backbone. We absolutely, you know, we were the biggest professional foulers in the league. We did everything that Rodri did and more, and we had that. But it seems to have gone. I think I feel like Ange has brought in this attempt to just change the mentality of the club top to bottom. And that's what I think those kind of statements are about.
Yeah, and like, even when I was the most skeptical, Barnaby, I was still Ants in, and my reasons was that he was doing important things culturally, and the recruitment was very good and would always benefit a future manager anywhere. Whereas the win now managers will recruit a lot of players that won't be able to go over to a new manager, you know. So and also, I just think, like, we have to be realistic about what kind of a club we're in, you know. And Levy is there and the board is there, and they are not gonna go on a big spend for players that don't have any resale value and so on, you know. Our biggest hope for good spend out of our board is what Ants is doing, is these potential superstars, future superstars, because even if they don't become future superstars, will always at least recoup our money, and probably a little bit more than that, you know. And that's what they need, you know. I'm not happy about that, not at all, you know. I'm very, as many people know, I do feel that our club's priority is to win the corporate game rather than the on-field game, you know. And we're winning there. We're the best in the world in that regard, in my view, you know. So which would then be nice if they would throw us a bone and back it up and grow their brand with some real push for silverware. But also, I think if Levy's ever gonna do it, it's gonna be because Ants is getting somewhere with this product, you know. So
I think, kind of relevant to what you were just saying, I wonder if actually I feel like Spurs did want to bring in Eberechi Eze this summer. I think they did. And I wonder whether, and I said it in my video this morning, I wonder whether Richarlison refusing to go to Saudi Arabia really affected that. Do you think that's what happened in the end?
Yeah, I was watching your last video there, and I think that's a very convincing theory, to be honest. And you know, the thing about Richarlison, I kind of feared it before we signed him, you know, because like there's mentality issues. I'm sure there's been also mental issues and just injuries and stuff like
Sure.
that. But there, I even then thought there were some mentality issues, and I exactly thought he would never be a good player that on the bench. You know, he would become very discontent on the bench, and I fear that's what's coming up now with him. So I do feel like we should be shipping out as soon as possible. But I can also like respect his choice of not wanting to go to Saudi.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, this is where like I really can't blame anyone in that regard, you know, because this is, of course, these things need to, you know, you need to get that player out to get another one in and so on, you know. So and that didn't happen, and that's a shame for sure. So
Totally. I just want to. I'm going to ask you about some of the players you mentioned it earlier. It's like the kind of buying these young potential superstars. Just going to bring you the names of those that we bought. Like I mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
Archie Gray, Wilson Odobert, Lucas Bergvall. Obviously, we've not seen anything of Yang Min Hyuk.
Mhm.
But also in terms of the players we bought last year as well, Brennan Johnson could be in that kind of state. Pedro Porro is still very young. Obviously, Mickey van der Ven.
Mhm.
They're the ones that kind of been around the first team squad so far. Which of those, from what you've seen, and maybe more concentrating on this summer's one, so Gray, Odobert, Bergvall, maybe, which of those do you
Mhm.
have kind of hope that they might break into the first team sometime soon? Just to give you, I think you've probably seen me talk about it before. I'm personally very excited about Bergvall, and I think he
Mhm.
potentially, from what I've seen, could be someone who Ange might not be able to leave out in the next
Mhm.
kind of few months.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you know, I've all like being from Iceland, grown up in Denmark, you know, I'm quite kind of aware of what's happening in the Nordic countries and just in general, Nordic players, you know, I mean, I don't want to say it in the wrong way. It's not that they have a high IQ. I think the training they go through is there's a lot more emphasis on the thinking part of the game. So I think in general you're going to get a higher percentage of clever players from the Nordic countries. Also, you also tend to get some really fighting warriors often, you know, due to small size and how they have to play with the country team and so on.
Sure.
It's usually, you know, you need to have some fighting spirit to get into those squad, you know. So but yeah, I think Bergwall is definitely he's going to be very soon a regular part of the first team. I mean, I think he's kind of there. He's a squad player in the first team. He's not the first 11 yet, but I think definitely Madison and the other players definitely need to you know, step up their game,
Yeah.
which I feel definitely Madison's been great this start of the season. So, and even like my main concern with Madison is his defensive liability, and that's improved a lot, I think. So, even though I mean, saying that it was Madison's
Yeah.
mistake that led to the
He
goal,
was on
but
he was on a booking though, wasn't he? So I think usually he
yeah,
would have
yeah,
he
yeah,
would have
yeah,
dragged him down.
exactly. And that's also the other part is also players that are kind of finding their feet in that regard tend to get booked more and so on, you know. And but I think like Wilson, for example, I think he's already a first team player, really. He's for me, he's really exciting, not only because he's silky on the ball and all
Mm.
of that, but he's actually providing that pull of defenders and being able to pull away himself. Like he's providing that space creation that we've been needing from wingers
Yeah.
for quite a while now. So
Yeah.
uh,
Sorry to
yeah.
interrupt there. I just wanted to say, just because otherwise I'll forget. Is Odebert's miss at the back post? I agree with everything you're saying about how positive he is, but was that miss at the back post where he should really? I think we all thought he should have gone with his head. Is that an example of maybe a thing where had we pushed the boat out and got an Eze and he was in that position, likely we
Yeah,
would have scored that goal. But because we're going for more kind of raw youth than a bit
yeah,
more experience, we're missing out on some of those chances.
for sure. SA would have killed it, I'm sure. But I mean, even experienced players, have the odd miss and so on. But I definitely think and that's what we're seeing a lot is the young players second guessing, not having enough of a killer instinct to simply just do the right thing in the moment. But that's also, I mean, if I have to put a positive spin on these kind of things, the same goes with Johnson and even Kulusevski, who's not a young player, such can also have these problem. The positive spin is that they are able to get into those situations, and now, which is quite the feat when you're talking about low block, almost every man behind the ball, and actually being able to create enough space to have that chance is positive. The difference, if you get that killer, like, I mean, there were rumors about Man City looking at Eze as well, and that's, for me, that tells you these are the kind of league winning players that you need, and Eze is definitely that in my view, so. But I mean, we can still hope that there's a pathway, or if not Eze, then somebody comparable is what they're looking at to get in at the next opportunity. I was kind of myself actually kind of sure that this would be one of the first signings we did this summer, but I guess it was too complicated with I think the Richarlison situation was key
Yeah.
there. For sure.
Yeah. And I think looking forward and like you trying to put positive spin on things, all of that, I mentioned all of those players that we'd got rid of this summer, right? So what was it? It's about kind of between 11 players probably. But then also last summer, we also got rid of Kane,
Yeah.
Winks, Davison Sanchez, Lucas Moura, Hugo Lloris. We're talking about probably, towards £500,000 a week off the wage bill, if not
Yeah.
more. And at some point, I feel like once they properly cleared the deck, and maybe that involves losing Richarlison and Reguilon in January or next summer, then is probably when the point is that they're able to say, okay, now we're willing to try and buy those kind of ready-made players, kind of to supplement these young talents that we have. But yeah, I agree with you. I was saying it in my videos all summer. I'm pretty sure that Eze will be the marquee signing. And maybe it was they wanted two marquee signings, Solanke plus Eze, but they would need to get rid of Richarlison, and that's not what was able to happen in the end. Just to kind of conclude then, Jorri, in terms of the next bunch of fixtures, we've got the Arsenal game, obviously, and then a run of games that come thick and fast. These young players that we've talked about, the young signings, the likes of Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall, they're going to get minutes now. Do you feel kind of relatively confident that those minutes will be able to make them grow and get us results both in the Premier League and the Carabao Cup, etc.?
That's the thing, Barnaby. I think this season's probably going to be quite the roller coaster, up and down. Because what I saw in the Newcastle game is, and I've seen it progressively with the three first games, but the Newcastle game, I really saw them really, really like completely, embrace the flow and the thinking of the hands ball type thing, and I really, and we played some amazing football, but we didn't kill it away, and for me that's almost worse than playing bad football and losing. It's like that's one of, like, as the old guy that I am, I can't stand seeing great effort go to waste, so but I'm thinking that that Ansball type thing is gonna be cemented in the squad pretty quickly. Now it becomes a question of, can we sharpen the edge of our attack in this current form, or do we need the additions before we really start ticking in with the goals? Because I was looking a little bit at the statistics, and we basically we're like I think Ben on We Are Tottenham TV's said it pretty well, that we need 5 or 6 good chances to score
Yeah.
1 goal, whereas when the teams get a chance to break on us, they need 1 chance, you know.
Yeah.
So that kind of means that we need to get around. We're executing half of our chances. They turn into, then we will outscore almost anything, you know. Is it realistic? I don't know. I mean, I think that's what Anne's system is, and this is what he's done in other leagues. But the Premier League is a different animal, you know, and especially with the low blocks, you really don't get them any more difficult than in the Premier League, you know. So
That's true. That's
yeah.
true. Well, Jorri, thank you so much for coming on, mate. Really appreciated this first of our regular chats. Guys, let us know what you think in the comment section below. Was it a good transfer window for Spurs? Was it a bad one? What did we need more? Who should we have got through the door? And also, don't forget, guys, it's only a few months till January, so don't get too upset about it. Make sure you press like on this video. Do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And you can also listen to this on the podcast platforms, be that Spotify or Apple Podcast. Just go over there, type in the Spurred on podcast. But most importantly, with a very boring international week going on, calm down. Everything's going to be okay. Spurs are going to turn Arsenal over next week. There you go. I just said it. Have a great rest of
Come
your
on,
day.
you Spurs.
Come on, you
I'll
Spurs.